My name is Kechi Okwuchi. I hope that as I share these truths, my truths with you all, that at least one of you would benefit in some way from them, become who I am today. What I want to do is to share with you 4 very important truths that I have tried to live my life by since December 10th, 2005, because that is the date when life as I knew it changed completely. And I was heading home for the Christmas holidays aboard a local airline with 108 other passengers, 60 of whom were students from my school. Everything about the flight was absolutely normal until about 20 minutes to landing, when the plane just suddenly malfunctioned during its descent into the airport. And when it crashed, it took the lives of 107 of the 109 people aboard, including all the other 60 kids from my school. Only 2 people survived this accident, myself and another lady I didn't know prior to the accident. And I suffered 3rd-degree burns over 65% of my body. And I was immediately flown to South Africa, where they had the level of equipment necessary to care for the burns that I had. This was me in South Africa with my parents. I was in the hospital-induced coma for about 5 weeks. From the moment the accident happened, I had very little control over the events that took place in my life, good or bad. What I did have complete control over, however, were my reactions to these events. Over the course of my recovery, I learned very important lessons that led to my truths about faith and identity, about moving forward, taking risks, and one last one. Learned more and more about him. I began to grow curious about my appearance post-accident. I wanted to know what I looked like, what my face looked like. And I knew that my mom was really worried about this, and so was I, but not necessarily for the reasons one might think. I wasn't worried about my features themselves. It was more about my reaction to my new features. How would my new face affect my personality, my self-esteem, my confidence? How much of these qualities were determined by my physical appearance? Turned out not as much as I thought. So when my mom raised that mirror to my face and I saw my reflection for the first time since the accident, I saw the scars, I saw the disfiguration, but somehow I could still see Kechi in that reflection. And I cannot explain the amount of relief that I felt, realizing this, because this meant that I could still be me, talk like me, act, joke around like me, even though I looked so radically different. I realized then that there are eternal and internal virtues that I believe that God placed in each one of us that are so much more important than our physical forms. And so I was able to define my identity by these virtues, because if it didn't matter to God what my physical form looked like, at least not as much as my internal virtues were, then it wouldn't matter to me either. And so that was how I learned my first truth. My scars and my physical form do not define me, and they do not represent my entire identity. Now, not all scars are visible and obvious like mine. Some people have invisible scars that hurt the heart and the soul, but the strongest people that I know are those who have allowed their scars to become a part of their story, a part of them becoming better versions of themselves. Now, my second truth came as I recovered from the depression of having lost so many friends in that plane crash. I asked myself, would I be able to move forward from this crippling pain, and if so, how? When I learned the truth about the accident, that all the other students from my school had passed away, I cried for 2 days straight. I was in this place of deep, horrible grief, knowing that I had lost so many friends at once. My parents and my grandmother, they would call me and, they would pray for me and try to comfort me. And, they would tell me that no one knew why these things happened. And that's when it hit me. That is so true. Why ask why? Because as far as I was concerned, no reason would ever justify the loss of so many lives, right? So it would probably serve me better to try to draw some kind of strength from the memories of the departed rather than spiral into the if-onlys and the whys, I should try to live my life in a way that would make the memories of those that passed away proud and those that they left behind. And that was how I decided to face life henceforth. That was how I decided to try to move forward. And it was a very slow process. But that was my second lesson. For me, moving forward means acknowledging the existence of a hardship in my life, whatever form it might take, and just making the choice to let it strengthen rather than stunt me. And it is definitely a choice for me. I tell myself, Kechi, it is okay to grieve and be sad about an obstacle or a bad situation, but at a point you're going to have to make the choice whether or not to stay in that place. And so I didn't want to use my injuries as a reason, like a crutch, or a reason to not work as hard for that A as much as any other student would. And this calls to mind something that acclaimed Nigerian music producer Kobam Zasuko said in a speech that I heard him give one time, where he said that merit will take you much further than pity ever will. And those are some of the wisest words I've ever heard, because I did not want anything that I did not earn. My second reason for striving so hard for academic excellence was that, to me, my degree was not just for me. It was for the 60 angels that passed away in that accident as well, who did not get the second. My third truth. I realized that if we keep waiting for the fear that comes with taking risks to go away before we do something new, we would never do the new thing, ever. And so since there's going to be fear either way, then you have to choose your fear. So that was my third truth. For me, I would much rather be afraid while doing the thing than be afraid of doing the thing. And I have found in my experience that choosing your fear is a great way to avoid regrets later on in life. So take my experience last year when I was a contestant on the TV show America's Got Talent. AGT was pretty much the purest form of risk I've ever taken in my life. And this is coming from someone who has had literally over 100 surgeries. I would never have signed myself up for that show if my friend didn't do it for me. She did it without telling me. I still can't believe that actually happened. If my friend hadn't done what she did, and if I hadn't taken the risk to follow through, because I could have said no, then I would still be convinced today that my talent isn't competitive enough. And truthfully, I still struggle with that from time to time. I have to fight voices in my head telling me that I only got as far as I did because of my story. And this ties back to me never wanting what I haven't earned. It was actually a serious personal concern for me while I was on the show. But I ended up becoming one of the top 10 finalists on that show because a friend saw something in me that I struggled to see in myself. The truth is, we as individuals, we hold ourselves back more than anyone else ever could. We are our own worst critics, and we talk ourselves out of taking risks and exploring opportunities better than any other person can. So this meant for me that I needed to get out of my head and realize that there was a bigger plan at work here, because I believe that God was using that America's Got Talent platform. He used that stage to give me a stage to share my gifts and my story with a global audience in a way that would hopefully impact people positively. Now, I would be lying if I said that this was the exact trajectory I saw my life heading towards, but what I can tell you is that when you take risks and when you choose your fear, amazing, amazing things can happen in your life. And that leads me to my final truth for the morning. It is that the best things in life happen outside your comfort zone. Thank you.